Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on The Flash Season 9. So we are officially into the final storyline ever for the Flash TV series after the airing of episode 10 in this ninth and final season. Now, this episode contains some very cool connections and sort of like looping around or looping back to season 1, I guess specifically the season 1 finale. But one major part of the episode was the introduction of a familiar looking character, but potentially not that familiar at the same time, if you get my drift. So at the start of episode 10, we followed the early parts of a general working day for this mysterious character. We didn't see their face, we saw the back of them, and they were just singing along to an Elton John song, with them living in what is currently, in 2023, Joe and Cecile's house. I was like, okay, that's a bit weird. With them then going to work at Mercury Labs, and them being called a doctor by the security guard, with us then seeing it's Eddie Thawne, or at least someone that looks very much like Eddie Thawne, played by Rick Cosnett. Now, we don't see this character again until right at the end of the episode, where he is struck by a bolt of lightning from what appears to be the negative speed force, with him also finding a classified document from the Central City Police Department, with this being the incident report to like the death of Eddie Thawne all the way back in season 1. But this mystery character, who, as I said, looks a hell of a lot like Eddie Thawne, unless all of our eyes are deceiving us, he looks very confused and then says, who the hell is Eddie Thawne? He has no idea. But I guess the real question around the situation should be not, who the hell is Eddie Thawne, but who the hell is this mystery character that looks like Eddie Thawne? So yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about in this video and going over I'd say I got 4 theories here, that the most common ones I've seen. So yeah, throughout the video, let me know in the comment section down below your general thoughts and theories, or just general thoughts on the theories we bring up and any other predictions you want to bring up, or any other theories that I don't mention. I'm very curious to hear what you guys have to say and where you think this could be going. And of course, if you're going to enjoy the video, want to show your support, everything like that, drop a like on the video. It takes 2 seconds. So the first thing I do want to say is, I know I'm going to get the obvious answer, because there was a name tag in the episode, which was at the beginning of the episode when he's sort of going to work at Mercury Labs. Now, the name tag, which you couldn't really see it when you're watching it. The name tag came up in the episode. I was like, oh, I tried to look in, but it's like blurred off and like only visible for like a second, maybe in the episode. So you had to scroll back and everything if you wanted to see it. I don't think many people would have seen it when they're actually watching the episode live. But the name tag did say Malcolm Gilmore, with the last name, and I guess his title as a doctor, so Dr. Gilmore, appearing maybe to just be an Easter egg to the comics, as Dr. Gilmore was actually the doctor who sent Malcolm, aka Cobalt Blue, on his path of a pretty crappy upbringing after sending him away with the Thawnes after his own drunken mistakes when delivering the Thawne's baby. So Nora Allen had twins, Barry, and who would go on to become Malcolm, but because of his mistake with the Thawne's baby, he gave Malcolm to them to sort of cover up his mistake and just say that the other twin to Barry didn't survive through the pregnancy or the birthing or the delivering of the babies, whichever way you want to word it. So yeah, Malcolm should have grown up with the life that Barry had, but didn't. So Dr. Gilmore was at fault for that. Now, to add, for those wondering, hold on, Barry didn't have the best upbringing because Nora died. To add, this was before Nora was murdered when Barry's a kid, and that was whole made canon. So Nora grew old as Barry became an adult. Much happier life for Barry back then. But yeah, the focus, I guess, is the fact that his first name is Malcolm in this whole situation, which ties to the comics and the whole Cobalt Blue situation. But we'll come back to all of that. Now, one thing I do want to quickly bring up, because it's something that isn't really touched upon in that final scene with, this character that looks like Eddie Thawne. It's not really touched upon then, but I think it might play a part in episode 11. And that was that in earlier parts of the episode, there was this voice that was coming from the blue crystal by the sounds of it. And it makes you wonder, is maybe the blue crystal, because this is another theory people have said, is the voice in the blue crystal actually a future version of this new character that we're seeing? So it's 10 years in the future after being more tapped in with a negative speed force, that's who the voice of the crystal is, or within the crystal? Or is the crystal like a thing from the negative speed force itself? Is that like the voice of the negative speed force? But if it is maybe the future version of this, mystery character who will be Cobalt Blue, maybe we're seeing how they came in possession of the blue crystal and then how it changed them and then fully took over them, later in this storyline. But that's a wait and see. It's a bit too early to be touching upon that, but it's still something that's being brought up. So I thought I would mention, because it'll probably play a part if that's going to, take place. But let's just jump into these different options. So I've actually got 4 written down. The first two are the most likely ones, and the next two are ones that sort of like plays on the storyline from the comics, I guess, or at least one of them specifically, and the other one's just more maybe just folding off something that was touched upon in episode 9, like the Oliver Queen return episode. But I think it's not very likely, but it's still worth mentioning because, you know, I've seen a decent amount of people mention it. So the first option in regards to who this, you know, Eddie Thawne doppelganger, if you want to put it, or just a person that looks like Eddie Thawne is maybe it's just simply Eddie Thawne, but it's Eddie Thawne with his memory wiped. So of course, we know at the end of season 1, Eddie Thawne was shot himself, effectively died, which erased Eobard Thawne, but his body was sucked into the singularity. Now the big thing was that with that is that we don't know where it went. They didn't show like Eddie Thawne getting spat out elsewhere or them solving anything like that. He just got sucked in there and that was it. We don't know where he went. That's a big mystery there. Where did Eddie Thawne's body go? Did it potentially go into the singularity, get spat out elsewhere, which could be where this, Malcolm Gilmore character is, but, memory wiped, or maybe a different even memory as a whole, which leads to him now becoming a doctor. Because, the thing is that Eddie was never a doctor, so he couldn't just get spat out here and learn all the science or learn all the information and knowledge and stuff to randomly become a doctor in whatever form it is. So that's the big thing there. Could he have it implanted in his head? But I think it would be a somewhat interesting thing to look into is like the whole singularity thing. Like if he did go in there and died and somehow reanimated him and then did spit him out elsewhere, that'd be an interesting story to follow if they wanted to do like a bit of a flashback situation with that. My only question with that is that where he lived didn't look that futuristic outside of maybe some of the stuff in his office. And of course, at the end of last season, we did see that the crystal was in the year 2049, but we've been to 2049 on multiple occasions, and we know they have all those holograms that come off the buildings, even at nighttime or during the day, and they weren't there. It just looked like present day outside of maybe his office, which it maybe looked like it might have been like 5 years in the future. I want to say maybe 5, max 10. Didn't look that advanced. So he's definitely not in 2049 where the crystal was. So that even adds like another element to this whole situation as to, is that crystal we're seeing after Cobalt Blue was using it, or is there some other time travel involved that takes him there? It's going to be very, very interesting to see what that, how all that plays out. But I guess the whole thing is that if this is Eddie Thawne that's, that was consumed by the singularity and spat out with the memory wipe, he wasn't spat out 20 years in the future by the looks of it. Maybe just a handful. At least compared to where he died, which was 2015. I mean, if we're like 5 years in the future, it's like 13, 14 years. So it's more than a decade. So it's actually not that small compared to when he died. For us now it is, but for when he died and was sucked in there, it's not. So it'll be very interesting to see if that's the case, how it plays out. Now, the next option is a very likely option as well because of one big connector that's already laid out there, and that's that he is Malcolm Thawne, or just Malcolm simply, the unknown child of Eddie Thawne. This has been a theory that I've gone with for a long time, ever since this storyline was pretty much confirmed to be happening. Now, he obviously could be a child with no connections, maybe from like a one-night stand or something where the woman fell pregnant, or just something along those lines, whichever, mathematics you want to put together to make that work. But Malcolm, grew up not knowing his father, not knowing his name, just not knowing who Eddie Thawne was at all, not knowing what he looked like or what he did, anything along those lines. He had no idea that Eddie Thawne was even a person, which is funny because it probably ties into the reason that he might go about doing certain things. So this would make sense as to why his name would be Malcolm Gilmore. He wouldn't be called Malcolm Thawne because there's no Eddie Thawne there to be a father figure or to have any sort of fatherly connection or to be married to his mother, to have that surname, anything along those lines. But that could be the big thing. He doesn't know who, Eddie Thawne is. He lives in Central City, but he has no idea who Eddie Thawne is. But one thing that's been pushed along, even in the season 2 premiere, is that Eddie wasn't properly recognized. The Flash was. The Flash was seen as the man that saved Central City. I think that was the name of the season 1 premiere. But Eddie wasn't. Eddie was the one that stopped them all from dying. Eobard or Reverse Flash was going to kill them all there and then, and Eddie shot himself and stopped that from happening. He was really the true hero of that day and that whole situation, but never properly recognized. But if he was properly recognized in whatever form it would be, you know, Malcolm Gilmore, or just Malcolm, would maybe know who Eddie Thawne is in some way, but that's not the case. And I think that's going to be a very interesting thing if he does look into, you know, who Eddie Thawne is, discovers what happened to him and everything along those lines. That could want him to avenge his father's legacy, especially if he learns or figures out that he is the son of Eddie Thawne. That would be a really cool storyline. It depends, maybe they have enough time with only 3 episodes left to do that. But I think this upcoming episode, episode 11, is going to contain all the explainers, regardless of who the person is, whether it's just Eddie Thawne with the memory wipe, or it is, you know, Malcolm, his son, or even someone else. I think that's going to have all the explainers. And then the last 2 episodes are him going about acting upon his revenge on the Flash and Team Flash as a whole. So that's what I think is going to play out. So I think by episode 11, we will know everything. We won't be, you know, lost. We won't be kept in the dark anymore, I don't think, at the very least. But the final 2 options are ones that I don't really vibe with for the most part, but I've seen a bunch of people say them, so I thought I'd bring them up just so, you know, they're not left out, I guess. So the first of these, like, other options is that this is Eddie's twin brother, which I guess is playing off the whole story from the comics, where he's a long-lost twin, separated at birth, everything like that. And that would work if they wanted to do it. Yeah, it makes sense. I just don't like it too much. I don't really like the twin brother thing anyway from the comics either. Like if they're going to do that, make it Barry's twin brother. But it's one that could work. It's one that could easily work if they wanted to do it. My only question would be that, like, he works at Mercury Labs, like if he lives in Central City, so if he was walking through Central City, surely he would bump into someone that would, even if it was whoever it might be, that might recognize Eddie or something like that. So that's my only question mark around it, but it would make sense. It would work. It would sort of be a play on the comics in some way. I just don't see it happening, to be completely honest. And the other option is a multiverse Eddie Thawne. I think this is mainly playing off the whole, you know, mentioning of the multiverse to Barry in episode 9 from Oliver. I don't think it's going to happen because I think it's just going to be in the same timeline and the same Earth as, you know, our Barry and our Eddie was from. So yeah, it's an option there. You can always bring in the multiverse now if they want to, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think we're mainly just going to be dealing timeline wise rather than multiverse wise. But you never know. I just don't think it's very likely. Now, in regards to which one I think sounds the most likely, I think it is actually very, very, very even between just Eddie Thawne with his memory wiped or Malcolm, the son or unknown child of Eddie Thawne. I think they're the ones that sound the most likely. If I had to pick, I'm trying to put my head in, or my brain in, or my thoughts, or just tap into Eric Wallace's brain, and also just the amount of episodes we have. I just don't like the thought, because we know Eddie, like we're not Eddie, so we know Cobalt Blue is going to be the villain. I don't like the thought of making Eddie the villain, but I guess if you have that his memory's wiped and he does villainous things, that doesn't really count. And if they can tap back into his core memories and bring them back, and he realizes what he's doing, he's wrong, or what he's doing is wrong, then he can go, oh, I didn't mean to do that. So you don't really make him the villain by the end of it. I want to say Malcolm, because it's also the one I want the most. My last little thing here was like, which one do I want the most? And I want it to be Malcolm Thawne. Like, and he takes the name of Thawne as well. So it's Malcolm Gilmore, but he like looks into Eddie and he's proud of what his dad did back in season 1. So he wants to adopt the name of Thawne. Maybe he didn't like his mum, who has the last name Gilmore. I'm not too sure what the case would be there, but I like the thought of it being Malcolm and him avenging his father's legacy and everything like that. I like the thought of like that being a core storyline and theme of the final storyline for this entire show, where also the Flash's legacy could be either up for question or also just cemented. So I do like the thought of it maybe being, just being Malcolm more and just that whole storyline there. But I'd be fine with the Eddie Thawne and his memory being wiped thing. I just prefer the Malcolm Thawne thing. But yeah, those are the options that I've seen the most, and I think the ones that make the most sense, at least those first 2. But feel free to let me know in the comment section down below your thoughts on all this. Which one would you want the most? Would you want Eddie Thawne with his memory wiped? Would you want the Malcolm Thawne thing? Would you want something else? And also, which one do you think makes the most sense and that you think is going to happen on the show? You might want the Malcolm one, like I do, but you think Eddie Thawne with his memory wiped is the one that's going to happen. Let me know in the comments. I'm very curious to hear what you guys have to think, as well as any discrepancies you have with what I've said. Let me know in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like on it to show support. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. And I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.